Mr. Bruce Thorne, can you please come on up?
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Good to be with you today. I am trying to be wide awake after a big day yesterday, but anyway, let me start off by just thanking Tanika for that leading this morning. I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of country today and pay my respects to elders past and present. And I also want to acknowledge those who've served before us, whose work we seek as a church to carry forward. Remember, of course, that we build on the solid rock of Christ. And so just in that, with that in mind, I'm mindful that this is our first Sunday in the post-Naomi era. But it wasn't last weekend a good celebration, great celebration. And thanks to those who organised it. Over January, we've been blessed to have some really wonderful messages brought to us, admittedly, even if they are pre-recorded or from someone in other parts of our world. And one of those that I listen to, sometimes I get to listen to them ahead of Sunday, which is interesting. And I have to admit that one of those that came through was emailed through, and Amy sort of played it, and I was in the background somewhere, hovering as I often am. And one of those was Paul Cameron's message that had 10 prayers for the new year. And I have to admit, the first time I listened to it, I thought, oh, well, that was okay. Thanks, Paul. You've read something somewhere else and shared it with us. And I was perhaps a bit dismissive. I know that would never happen for any of you, but if I encourage you to read, it's been reproduced in the contact largely, but or perhaps to have a listen to Paul again, share that message. In fact, so by the time I listened to it on the Sunday when we were together, it was the second time through. And I have to admit, it got better. And since then, I've thought of it some more. And I'm actually convinced now that it was quite profound. So I want to start by lifting some of that material. And in fact, today my focus is on the second of those 10 prayers that he mentioned. And so he introduced those 10 prayers by saying that, 2021, of course, was a year filled with lots of trials and troubles for many, and encouraged us to start this one on our knees with the biblical context that we should bring everything before God in prayer and to pray constantly. So the first of those 10 prayers was a prayer for a fresh start. And the prayer went like this: Lord, thank you for another year of life and all that you provided for us last year when we just had Christmas. We lay before you all the disappointments and unfinished work, and we ask for your mercy, peace, and joy as we look to the new year ahead, to the year ahead. Who could do us some more joy this year? Ready? May we delight in the gift of your presence as we discern the journey you have for us in this new year. That is a great prayer. Delighting in the gift of God's presence and knowing his mercy, peace and joy will be wonderful things to experience, and I pray that they are ours this year. The second prayer, and the one I want to focus on today, was a prayer for our habits. And I think this, like many of those, we could easily listen to and gloss over and say, oh, that's nice words. Move on. Here's how it goes. Lord, we confess that we spend much of our day thoughtlessly consuming the things around us. Our habits often lack intention and cause us to live distracted, self-focused lives. Would you bring to our attention the unhealthy ways we spend our time, energy, thoughts, talents, and money? Show us old habits to turn away from and new habits to practice. Shape us by your Spirit into more merciful people who love you and our neighbours with greater intention. Likewise, I think that is quite a profound prayer. It is easy to go through our daily, to spend our days thoughtlessly consuming the things around us or thoughtlessly following the patterns that we've developed. I looked up the dictionary to see what is a habit. I think we all know what habits are, right? We have an idea of what they are. The dictionary tells us that it's a noun and means a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. And the example is, he has an annoying habit of interrupting me. That could be me. I'm sorry. But some habits, if we express them perhaps a little more positively, can be very good. Tanika just referred to the idea of getting kids into a routine for school, going to bed at a reasonable time and being ready for school. Good habits can be made, which that prayer refers to as well. Not just around old habits being turned away from, but new habits to practice. And as I thought about this, the context for Paul's message, of course, was around a period of change, a change of year. There's lots of change around COVID, and he acknowledged the change around our ministry leadership. And so I thought, well, what exactly is change? I think we all know what change is as well, right? In the dictionary it says change is both a verb and a noun. It has multiple definitions, and as a result we know that the word is used frequently, and in fact we live it constantly. We have a pretty good idea of what change is. I think some of the problem is that habits fly in the face of the constancy of change. Maybe they're our response trying to deal with change. There are lots of biblical references to habits. In Exodus 21, there is a whole series of personal injury laws, if you like, and I'll read to you a couple of verses. In chapter 28, this has got nothing to do with, not contracts, but covenants and heifers. But anyway, here we go. It's not a fixation of mine, is what I'm trying to say. Verse 28 of Exodus 21. If a bull gores a man or woman to death, the bull is to be stoned to death, and its meat must not be eaten. That sounds pretty simple, right? As with all laws, there are complications, but the owner of the bull will not be held responsible. If, however, the bull has had the habit of goring, and the owner has been warned but has not kept it penned up, and it kills a man or a woman, the bull is to be stoned, and its owner also is to be put to death. The point here is that habits have consequences. If anyone's bull injures someone else's bull and it dies, the two parties are to sell the live one and divide both the money and the dead animal equally. However, if it was known that the bull had the habit of goring, yet the owner did not keep it penned up, the owner must pay animal for animal, so must give a bull to the other person and take the dead animal in exchange. Habits, our habits, just as these habits of the bull, have consequences. In Numbers chapter 22, we read this interesting story about a chap named Balaam and his donkey. I'll read a few verses here. Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, understandably, it turned off the road into a field. And so Balaam beat it to get it back on the road. Beat the donkey. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path through the vineyards with walls on both sides. And when the donkey again saw the angel of the Lord, it pressed close to the wall, crushing Balaam's foot against it. So Balaam beats the donkey up again. Then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn, either to the left or to the right. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down underneath Balaam. And he was very angry, and he beat it with his staff. And then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and it said to Balaam, "What have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times?" If that's not weird enough, Balaam then answers the donkey, "You've made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now." And the donkey says to Balaam, "Am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day?" And I dare say that every day he's ridden him. He hasn't been crushed against a wall and all these other things. "What have I done to make you Am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you?" I don't know how long Balaam had his donkey, but I dare say never in the past had his donkey decided to just sit down underneath him. "No," said Balaam. And then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. The angel of the Lord, I'll just read this a couple of extra verses so you can see the point of this story. The angel of the Lord asked him, "Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If it had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you by now. But I would have spared it," the donkey. The point is, habits are broken if it means protecting ourselves. We're quite prepared to change our habits. And I consider many people who've had adverse medical diagnoses, for example, and suddenly they eat differently, they act differently, they exercise, they do all sorts of things. Habits are broken when it means protecting ourselves. In 1 Timothy chapter 5, there's some counsel or some advice for widows and for elders and for slaves. And verse 11 says, "As for younger widows, when their sensual desires overcome their dedication to Christ, they get into the habit of being idle and going about from house to house. And not only do they become idlers, but also busybodies who talk nonsense, saying things they ought not to." And then the counsel continues. My point is, you can get into habits fairly easily without thinking too much about them. Have you ever questioned why you have your habits? Have you ever even identified what your habits are? In Hebrews chapter 10, we're called to persevere in faith. And verse 24 says, "Let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day of the Lord approaching." We know that Jesus himself had some habits. He was in the habit, for example, of going off on his own to pray, usually early in the morning. I'm not sure where this saying came from. I think a number of our leadership team heard it at Summit one year, but it says simply this: nothing changes if nothing changes. I was going to talk a bit about fixed mindsets and growth mindsets, but I'll skip that bit. I want to introduce to you a picture which I think is helpful, or at least I think it's helpful. It's called the comfort zone map. And it has on that left, that inner part, it says, here's the comfort zone where we're safe, we're comfortable, we can feel like we're in control. There's just one problem with the comfort zone. It can change without our permission. External things can butt in on that. But outside this comfort zone, there is kind of a fear zone where, we can lack confidence perhaps doing something new. Or we can find excuses why we don't do that because, we're not good at it or something. We can be intimidated by outside ideas in this fear zone. And then it's got another zone, the light blue one there is the learning zone, where we are in a new place perhaps, and we're learning to problem solve. We're perhaps more receptive to outside input because it helps us deal with what we don't know. And we acquire new skills. And then beyond that, that outer part is shown here as a growth zone, where our vision is expanded, where we surpass the milestones we thought we might once have been our best goals or best efforts. And so we can define new goals. Now, I don't know that this map, if you like, I didn't create it, and I don't know that it has any biblical, this relates to that. But I found it helpful just in thinking about the habits that we have and change and how we can deal with that. We can find all the excuses and stay in our comfort zone, or we can actually press ourselves to move out. I loved also during January David Ratton's message, and the beauty of having them on YouTube, of course, is you can go back and rewatch them, and so that's been good. I love particularly his illustration about the football game where he says 36 players desperately in need of a rest are being watched by thousands desperately in need of some exercise. It reminded me of that old 80-20 rule that, people talk about, and what it actually looks like I was thinking about here at Redcliffs, where I think we have a much higher level of engagement. As a church, I think that engagement is reflective of our values, where we love people to participate and to contribute, and we want to be selfless. But perhaps rather than congratulating ourselves, I wondered against what measure we should be comparing. But the truth is, as we think about our habits and we think about the changes that are upon us, whether this map is helpful, I don't know. You can probably get rid of that now. But we all have an opportunity to shape the change, to give things a crack, even if we've never done them before, and to grow, perhaps, before we get pruned. However, there is a problem. I know that Naomi's used before the illustration of the Lego block, and Lego is hard to see, so I've upgraded to Duplo. But you get the idea. It's a block, it's sort of meant for building things together. And it has these little spots on the bottom where you can hook things on, and it has spots on the top where you can also, build things on. That's great. Didn't expect that to stay there. So I'm conscious that we all have limited resources, and even together we have limited, possibly destructive resources. Anyway, no matter what size or colour or shape we are, if we think of ourselves as Lego/Duplo blocks. It's a very colourful illustration here. Thank you. Whoop. There's always one. No matter what size or what our capacity, we all have limitations on the number of, I don't know what you call those things, knobs, pegs, things that we can actually help support others with. We don't have unlimited time. We don't have unlimited money. We don't have unlimited energy. And I'm conscious that in times of change, we're often encouraged to add something new into our life. Advertising constantly tells us we need to try this, we need to buy that, we need more. You know, why have one car when you can have two? It's ridiculous. Anyway, we all have limitations. So before we ask, thinking about that comfort zone, you know, what's new? What are we learning? What are we trying differently in our lives? Maybe I should be asking, what are we giving away? What are we letting go of? I'm not going to play the song. What are we saying? Enough. We've done this enough. I recognise that change means loss, and that letting go is hard. It's painful, even if it's just the Band-Aid coming off the top. You know, like, we need to be a bit selfless if we're going to let go, and that's good for us too. As we let go of things, as we cease to have such full blocks where every waking moment is filled with activity and things we need to do and places we need to be, we'll find that we have the freedom to take on new things. This verse for me, for some time probably, has been running in the background of my mind. It's from Matthew 28. I'll start at verse 16. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. This is the disciples. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age." That is both a great promise and a great challenge. What we know from our life together here in Redcliffe is that we have given others priority. We want God's message to be shared with others. We want the things that we do to be helpful for others to understand His love and His hope, His grace and mercy. We know that there's a place for everyone. We value participation and contribution because we know that no 1, 2, 10 or 20 people can do everything. We actually need everyone's contribution. We know that change will continue. I'm sorry, but there's going to be more change. I love when you discover things that are just so true and yet you've overlooked them for years perhaps. When at the office where I work sometimes, a couple of years ago I went there, sometimes I'd go for a walk up 11th and I'd turn the corner into Lime Avenue. I'm not sure what the business is that has, like, it's the financial advising and tax whatever kind of business. And as you go around the corner there, I could very easily neglect to look at, this, for example, the name of the business, which obviously I have. But as I walk on towards the post office or to get some lunch or whatever. But on the doors, has anyone ever been to that building? So 11th and Lime? Dale, you've been there. Fantastic. On the doors, they have something written, and I think it's great. It says, and I'm just trying to remember what it said without having to actually go and visit the doorway again. it says something about old keys don't open new doors or don't unlock new doors or something like that. Old ways basically don't really meet the new needs. Old ways don't open new doors. Maybe it was that. Who knows? Look, if you're going past, have a look at the door. It's a good saying. Change will continue, but as those verses from Matthew chapter 28 tell us, he is with us. Wherever he leads us, he will feed us and he will be with us. He will sustain us. My point is this, and I'll finish. We have opportunities to embrace, and I encourage you to embrace those opportunities. Even if we don't know what the details are. You know, that journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. You don't know what the next step is, but take the first step. And I encourage you today to prepare. I don't know what that looks like for you. Maybe that's letting go of something. Maybe that's just creating some space in your world, whatever that might mean, so that whatever that unknown thing is that's going to come up, because something will come up, and you've got the space and the energy and the resources to go, yeah, I'm going to get on that. Perhaps it's letting go of something. Perhaps it's learning something. Perhaps it's deliberately taking up an opportunity to learn something new. Perhaps it's doing something different. I had a discussion with someone this week and they were asking me, what does your church need? And I said, well, our church has really been pretty much a church of small groups, of life groups, you know, and one of my concerns is that those who aren't in life groups perhaps miss the connection and the growth that happens in those sort of groups. So I said, I think we need some life group leaders. Maybe there's something that you can step into. The main thing is, as the prayer for our habits prompted us earlier on, that we're following where God leads us. In that first prayer, we prayed, may we delight in the gift of your presence as we discern the journey you have for us this new year. So some of it's being a disciple ahead of discipling or disciple making. They're two sides of the same coin. But what are those things that we can do? Well, I don't know what God will speak to you about. But for example, here are some biblical encouragements. One is practice hospitality. You know, have someone visit your home, or perhaps meet someone somewhere where you can encourage them to feel at home. Another one might be just to pray for someone. Who are the people that God is asking you to pray for? These might be big things for you. They might be small things. Finally, I think something all of us can do is to cheer one another on as we follow Jesus. It was Paul's encouragement that others would follow him as he follows Jesus. In other words, don't follow him with his bad habits, but follow his following of Jesus. We can all encourage one another to do that. And as we do that, we will, if we think about that comfort zone map, we'll move out of our comfort zone. But we will overcome fear. We will learn some new things and we will grow. And all the way, God will be with us. I want to close by using again the prayer that Paul introduced to us, the prayer of abandonment. Would you pray with me? Gracious, generous, and spacious Father, we abandon ourselves into your hands. Do with us what you will. And whatever you may do, we thank you. We are ready for all. We accept all. Let only your will be done in us and in all your creatures. We wish no more than this, O Lord. Into your hands we commend our souls, our story, our past, our present, our future. We offer it to you with all the love of our hearts, for we love you, Lord, and so need to give ourselves, to surrender ourselves into your hands without reserve and with boundless confidence, for you are our Father. Amen.